Everyone in the room smelled of the end of a Nairobi afternoon, cotton shirts tinged with sweat, the resin scent of worn wooden benches, faint traces of dust caught in sliding rays. I stood in front of the battered easel, shaking so hard I barely kept the brush from falling to the charity-faded linoleum. The jury of local artists and patrons eyed me from behind their folded arms, sober behind plastic-rimmed glasses, their faces dappled in shade from the barred windows. To my left, Mama sat, lips set in prayer, clutching a handkerchief. The canvas before me, for all its mute expectation, looked blank. My painting was there I'd worked for weeks, pouring every waking hour into those layered blues and trembling shapes, but now, under the white light and cold silence, it was as though the colors had drained away. My tongue was thick, words stuck where I needed calm. "Tell us, Amos," Mr. Kurui said, his voice sharp as a tuk-tuk's horn. "What story do you want your picture to tell?" My stomach clenched. Over his shoulder I saw my younger brother Kaijan smirk. Auntie Ruth, eyes narrowed, shook her head. None of my family had ever understood my obsession with painting. "Doctors," Mama always said, "we make doctors teachers. Not these dreamers who chase rainbows in pigment." But I had insisted again and again, believing somewhere deep inside that I could be both son and artist. "I wanted to show the city," I began, voice barely a whisper. My throat ached. Everyone's attention prickled at my skin, how it holds both hope and despair sometimes together. The blue here, the brush quivered in my grip, tracing air above the figures, is for the promise of rain, even on the dry days. Beside me I heard a sharp inhale from a jury member. My mind skipped. Was it wonder or scorn? The rest of my sentence broke apart. I heard laughter somewhere in the back, that quick suppressed snort. My cheeks burned. I fumbled a phrase about movement and struggle, but the words felt childish. Tears threatened at the corners of my eyes. The painting, so alive in my cramped room, seemed meaningless. For a moment the urge to run was overwhelming, to flee from this stage and never turn back. Afterward, as the jury retreated to their formal conference, I heard snatches of their quiet reviews. "He's got no discipline," one said. "Too sentimental," another remarked. "Is this even real art?" The laughter from the back row rose loud for a second and then faded into silence. Mama shuffled beside me in the echoing hallway. The light was yellow and broken, and her eyes were gentle but sad. "You tried," she whispered, rubbing her thumb across my knuckles as though I was still a little boy, fallen and grazed. "But Amos, dreams cannot feed us. Be serious about your life." I only nodded, not sure I could speak without shame boiling over. The results were posted 2 days later. My name was at the bottom of the list. "Not selected," someone had scrawled in biro beside it. I tried to keep working, but back home my paints dried on the palette. The apartment, crowded as always, half filled with Kaijan's endlessly ringing phone and Auntie Ruth's arguments with her sisters, seemed smaller by the week. My painting supplies were stashed in the corner above the laundry bin, the tubes cracking, my confidence shrinking to a whisper. Life pressed down, errands, endless petty jobs, promises to try harder at real work. My dreams of exhibiting in a Nairobi gallery, of seeing my vision reflected in someone else's eyes, curled inward. Over the years, my family grew louder in their opinions. At birthday parties and after church, relatives would ask, "So, Amos, still with your colors? When are you going to get serious? Apply to that call center your cousin knows." Even my friends, those who hadn't left for Dubai or the States, distanced themselves, their WhatsApp replies shorter, hesitating around the subject of my pictures. But a stubborn thread inside me refused to die. Some nights I'd creep into the living room after everyone slept, rescue an old sketchbook and draw by light from my dying phone. It was painful and lonely. I didn't know then that I would find other artists or that my life could open again. All I knew was the taste of rejection and the dull ache of hope. It was an ad taped to a power pole in downtown Nairobi that changed everything for me. I'd been walking back from a market job, shirt clinging to my back, head hot with disappointment. I'd spilled tomatoes all over a client's carpet and been docked half my pay. As I passed a crossroads, scraps of paper fluttered in the diesel smoke. One caught my eye: artist needed. New community mural project, Kibera initiative, all welcome. No age limit, no requirements beyond a portfolio. Portfolio. For a second, the word felt like a stone. My only portfolio was a battered envelope, 2 torn canvases and worn sketchbooks. But something inside me flared. Maybe it was desperation, maybe defiance. I tore off the slips, sweaty fingers creasing the cheap ink, and made up my mind. That night, pressed between my sleeping brother and the clutter of the flat, I filled a backpack with my best work. At 4 in the morning, before anyone stirred, I slipped out and headed across the slow, waking city. The sun burned above Gicombe by the time I reached Kibera, the railway market already alive with voices and carts. The studio was no more than a shelter blue canvas rooftop stretched over scaffolding and tables. Inside, a dozen artists worked, laughing, sketching, mixing paints. Their ease stunned me. Some had formal training, others told me they picked up their skills dodging bottles in back alleys, but they welcomed me with open palms and hard questions. I kept my head down and my answers simple as I showed my sketches to the coordinator, Miriam, a slight woman with hair clipped short. "You paint emotion," she told me as she rifled through my stack, pausing over a sketch of my mother making ugali by the stove. "How would you show that feeling to the whole estate?" I didn't think, I replied the only way I knew. By showing their struggle seated beside their joy, like neighbors. She smiled and set out a bucket of whitewash, "Then let's see you try." That first afternoon, kneeling in the dirt sketching outlines of sunrise across a tumbled wall, I felt something loosen in my chest, a long taut string finally given slack. In this crowd, with everyone focused on the task and not the criticism, I found room to work, to fail, to try again. The city watched us paint. Children stuck out their tongues, a conductor laughed from his matatu window, grandmothers in bright kangas whispered blessings. Every day I learned more, how to scale a drawing larger than myself, how to blend wall paint for depth, how to hold a community's wishes in my brush, and still quietly speak my own truths between the bricks. I learned to accept guidance, sometimes criticism strung, but unlike home, it came from those who believed I could do better. Months spun by, and with them, scraps of success. The first mural was featured in a local paper. A photographer snapped my picture. I saw in a barbershop on River Road my own face in print for the first time, awkward smile, paint-spattered jeans. I mailed the clipping to Mama, heart pounding. No reply came. Still, I did not stop. When the mural was finished, Miriam offered me another job, this one downtown. "You'll have to teach what you know," she told me, "and your story will help." It was not glamorous work, the pay was thin soup and bread. But my reputation grew, one commission at a time, a daycare wall, a coffee house, a health clinic decorated with blooming frangipani trees. Each month I managed to send a little something home. Groceries, a pair of new sandals for Kaijan, a patterned shuka for Auntie Ruth. On holidays I returned to visit. The welcome was grudging, often colored by snide updates about real careers. Friends changed the subject when art came up. My mother rarely met my eye, but she'd set aside a plate and some tea, the small evidence of her care. One rainy Christmas, years after that first humiliation, the phone in our flat rang at dawn. Mama answered, her voice suddenly thin, and pressed the phone to my ear. "A big man wants you," she told me. On the line, a voice introduced himself as Juma Wanjala, gallery owner, friend of a friend. He had seen my mural, the one with the river women, and wanted to buy a painting not for himself, but for a visiting dignitary. "You are the man with eyes," he said. "The eyes that belong in the National Gallery." I could hardly breathe as I accepted. The months that followed were a fever. I worked 20 hours some days, scrapping together every shilling for supplies, surviving on thick black tea and bread rolls from the corner bakery. When Kaijan left home for good, I got a job with Safaricom, bro, real work. I wept quietly, and then painted the ache into a diptych of two boys sharing a cracked kite. I ignored the muttered skepticism from my family, though it strung afresh each time. The morning of my show, the city felt wide and electric. I arrived before dawn to hang my paintings. Cityscapes alive with rainlight, mothers stirring pots built of faded hope, sunburned men bargaining over piles of mangoes. My own story, our story laid bare in colour. At opening night, under the gallery's soft lights and clinking glasses, I waited for someone from home to arrive. I had left invitation cards on the kitchen table days before, half expecting them to disappear. First my cousin twirled in, all false bravado, wearing cologne loud as car horns. Then an uncle still smelling of the matatu engine he drove. Then Ruth, cautious, arms crossed. Finally Mama. Her dress was neatly pressed, her shoes worn but shined, her hair drawn close to her scalp as always. She moved with the quiet dignity of someone terrified to be here. The gallery was crowded, critics, newsmen, a few Nairobi socialites. I tried to keep my hands steady as the first red sticker appeared beside my favorite canvas. Faces blurred, smiles came and went. For a dizzying moment, I was back before the jury, opening myself to the world. A commotion rose by the entrance. I looked up, my chest tightening. Auntie Ruth's shrill voice sliced through the music. Eek, so this one is for Amos, this here, he painted all of these. Someone, a reporter, maybe turned a camera toward her. The crowd parted, my uncles stood together, uncomfortable but proud. Kaijin, unexpected, taller, older, edged through, wearing a company badge and surprised smile. For a heavy moment, everyone looked at my family, at me, at the paintings. This is the boy I told you about, Auntie crowed, now emboldened. The same one, who used to sit and waste all the soap drawing on our kitchen walls. Her laughter was loud, but now something else underlay it. Surprise mixed with reluctant awe, people smiled. Mama approached the largest canvas, an old, sweet potato-laden kiosk drenched in gold afternoon sunlight. She leaned in, studying it, one finger pressed to her temple. The painting was of her, though I'd never said so. The poise, the angle of arms, even the charcoal apron at her neck. She turned, and in the spotlight tears shone silver beneath her lashes. When she hugged me, her grip was fierce but trembling. Around us the jibes faded, guests murmured appreciatively. Juma Wanjala himself swept up, grasped my hand, pronounced loudly, "This is the future, the new Nairobi." I looked at Mam, at the pride and vulnerability etched together on her face. My cousins and aunts for once quieted, studying the proof on the walls. Even Kaijin, eyes wide, clapped my shoulder. After the applause and the photos, after the dignitaries and critics slid away, I stood with Mama beneath my mural. The city's traffic hummed in the darkness beyond, the gallery lights glowed warm and tender. "You did it, my son," she whispered quietly, clutching my hand. "You really did it." "I'm still doing it," I said, my voice thick but stronger than I ever remembered. She took in the paintings, the crowd, the evidence that this ridiculous dream had come true. I could see, in that moment, the shift in her, the ache of all those years battling fear for my future slowly softening into something close to pride. We walked slowly home that night, the stars sharp above Luthuli Avenue. The city was ours, both of us changed forever, and in the hush of the evening I knew I had come home, steel-forged and tender, not as a failed dreamer, but as the artist I had always hoped to be.